A lovely day to you. I am Aisha Jibrin. Now, in light of the events just watched, history has been made again today as the president has, called for the proclamation he made sometime last week that the late Chief MK Abiola and Gani Fawemi be gazetted rather. And today is the honoring ceremony. There's a lot that is expected of today. And as seen in that clip, there's a lot that had gone down in 1993. Now, joining me in the studio to talk more and shed more light on said topic are legal practitioners Frank Tete and Festus Oguche. You're welcome to the studio, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, June 12 is just one that has been in the minds of many Nigerians, being the fact that that year marked, the fairest and freest elections known to Nigerians, as, most we say. And posthumously, the president has decided now that he wants to, honor said people with the greatest honor of the land. Let's start with you, Frank. Could you tell us your June 12, 1993 experience vis-a-vis the proclamation today?
Oh, well, for me, in 1993, the memory is still quite vivid to me. In 1993, I can still recall the campaign song of Chief MK Abiola, Hope 93 campaign song. MKO, you are the man, and those songs were quite exciting. And then that was the same year I started my university education. Actually, I was in University of Benin, a year one student at that time, and the elections, no doubt, where people just believed that it was a time of relief. General Babangida had been in the saddle for such a long time, and then we had a very dramatic, preparation to that election. Firstly, by fiat, the president ordered that we should have two political parties, and within a space of a few months, two party secretariats were erected in every local government in Nigeria. And we actually at that time had elected governors, we had elected houses of assembly members already running, so we're just waiting for the presidential election. And it came and it was quite successful because firstly it was a Muslim ticket, and I must tell you, back then in Delta State, and I was living in Delta State, I was going to school in the Edo State University of Benin. There was no mention, there was no reference to the fact that Chief MKO was a Muslim and Babagana Kingibe was also a Muslim. It was such a unifying moment for us at that time as a people. And there came the annulment, which was something that was bewildering. We just couldn't understand what was going on. But as students, we mobilized, we protested against it. We also did everything possible to, to also register our grievances with the then military president. But unfortunately, we're being bamboozled all the time. You find that the interim government came in, and one of our professors there, Professor Imoge, was also appointed into that interim government. So June 12 for us lived a very strong impression. And we also made an impression of it because we had a brand new building that was delivered to us as students, our Students' Union Secretariat. And Mike Igini, the current resident electoral commissioner, was then Student Union Government President. And instantaneously, the moment the building was delivered, the keys were handed over to us, we declared on June 12 we stand. And that's how we painted June 12 on that building. And till date, June 12 is still on that building, and it's known as the June 12 building, University of Benin. And we can proudly say that we were the first to actually recognize June 12 and honor Abiola. Abiola was in London, where making claims to his presidency, and you find out that he came back after 100 days to Nigeria. The first place he visited was University of Benin because we did that great honor of naming that building after June 12. And he was very excited. Chief Odige Oyegun came along with him. And while we were cheering Abiola, and there was nothing to cheer Chief Oyegun at that time because he was governor, Oyegun, in that euphoria, announced that he was giving bursary to all Edo State students.
That is one very, experience that must have made it smack. How about you, Festus? Tell us your June 12 experience.
Well, it was quite exhilarating. A lot of us were very, very excited about it, despite of the fact that it gave us also some bit of sadness to a large extent, because there were a lot of contradictions, politically speaking, then. And there are even constitutional contradictions that arose then, which culminated to the annulment, which I must say was a very sad moment for me and for people around me. The experience to every other Nigerian, if I can put it that way, has not been quite a very good one, because June 12th was supposed to provide the necessary vistas upon which we can use to construct the past, the present, and the future. Incidentally, nothing much has been said about it until recently, when Mr. President found it necessary to accord the deserving respect to Abiolas, which we had done, even though in a rather surreptitious manner, because we are looking at it vis-a-vis the constitutionality or otherwise, the legality or otherwise. In spite of that, Abiolas represents the watershed in Nigeria's democracy. He paid the price, the supreme price, and everybody agreed that June 12 election is the freest and the fairest out of them all. We are yet to see an election that will beat June 12 in terms of standards, in terms of conformity with the norms of elections. Even till date, we still have very serious doubt as to the independence or otherwise of our electoral commission. All these issues. But June 12 to me, I look up to it always as maybe an exemplary setting that will set the goals for our peculiar objectives, if you know how to navigate through that course.
Okay. Now, Frank, let's go to, back still in history before his death, and, when Abacha, well, he was supposed to come out, rather, MK Abiola to come, and then there were so many speculations concerning is that, what do you think happened exactly?
In what happened to June 12th, or what happened to Abiola?
What happened to Abiola?
Abiola, I believe, because I am a natural conspiracy theorist, I believe Abiola was killed. There's no doubt about that. First, General Abacha died in very mysterious circumstances, all which clearly also pointed to the fact that he was assassinated. I'm not actually alluding only to the Apple story, but I'm talking about what happened. The testimonies at the Oguche panel were from what I deduced from what Major Al-Mustafa then testified, and other persons testified, I knew that General Abacha was also assassinated. And I think those who controlled who were at the corridors of power at that time thought, for the purpose of balance, MK Abiola should also be assassinated. And like I said, this is in the realm of conspiracy theory, which is a lot of which is conjecture. But you only realize that, and I find it very difficult to understand that Kofi Annan, then United Nations Secretary General, was in Nigeria. And I think my learned senior who should have a better recall of those events. MK Abiola had already met with him. I had already met with a few international officials like Pickering and who was the U.S.
I was quite surprised when he told him, I am the United Nations Secretary General. Yes. He had been in incarceration within that period. He said, I thought it was the other gentleman.
Yeah, the other guy.
Who was that gentleman?
I think it was not the Quella.
The Egyptian.
The Egyptian. That is, what's his name? Butrus Gali. Butrus Gali. And then,
I thought it's Butrus Gali.
Yes,
I am the US Secretary.
And then eventually he had a meeting. And then, unfortunately, and that was the famous tea issue. Now he decided, on the course of that meeting, to drink tea. And according to Major Al-Mustafa, it's possible that the handle of that tea was laced with cyanide, with the kind of cyanide that travels very fast through the fingers to the brain, and that was what actually happened. That's the way he was killed. I mean, I believe the essence of the Oguche panel, then we didn't do properly what the Truth and Reconciliation Committee did for South Africa. We had the Human Rights Violation Investigation panel under Justice Oguche. It would have gone further. I mean, up to now, people like senior counsel like Festus Oguche should be very worried that the report of that human rights violation investigation panel to date has not been published.
Exactly.
So so if you ask me in a sentence, I would say that MK Abiola was killed to balance the political forces of that time.
Do you share Frank's assertion?
Well, quite to some extent, because the circumstances and the contractions that led to his death are quite will erase any human's curiosity, because the pattern in which it happened and how it happened, all of them, the conspiracy theory also, which I think will be very prominent in my mind if I'm to make any conjecture, maybe to use that word. Yes. Well, the death is quite sad anyway, but then a lot of people did not see it coming. We thought maybe the whole thing would end in incarceration and that. And I think it was the next day after his death that Abacha also died too. And a whole lot of theories have been put together here and there as to what happened, the circumstances leading to that.
Abacha had died. Abacha had died. So Abacha's death actually brought a lot of freedom, because General Obasanjo was in prison at the time. A lot more persons were in prison. Unfortunately, General Yar'Adua died in prison. Now, Abacha just kept them in prison. As for Obasanjo, just before I entered university, I had already prepared my mind to protest for Obasanjo, because I had tremendous respect for him. Firstly, because he handed over power in 1979, and then two, he became friends with Margaret Thatcher and was always criticizing Margaret Thatcher, urging Margaret Thatcher and the rest of, who was the most powerful prime minister at that time in the Commonwealth, urging them to ensure that the military government in Nigeria, there's a lot of pressure on General Abacha to ensure that human rights are respected. And then he was also pushing for greater recognition for Africa. General Obasanjo at that time wanted to be the Secretary General, Mr. Festus can recall. He wanted to be the Secretary General of the United Nations. So he campaigned. And if I can remember, Nigeria didn't quite support Obasanjo more, but people like Jimmy Carter, former president of the United States, were supporting, saying that Obasanjo should be United Nations Secretary General. Now, Obasanjo was incarcerated, along with a number of others, for a phantom coup against Abacha. So, and then what actually happened was, when General Abacha died, that brought a huge sense of relief to all of us. At that time, we actually thought that June 12th, the spirit of June 12th was going to be realized. I must tell you the truth. As at that time, was it 98 when General Abacha died? Oh no! In fact, that was one of I think the only time I saw people rejoicing at the death of anybody, and that's sad. But they were not rejoicing that the man died. They were simply rejoicing that okay, his death must have brought freedom, and that's how MKO came out. He came out and he was having meetings and.
Next thing we're hearing is it.
I think the Truth and Reconciliation Commission chaired by the Honorable Justice Oputa was a very veritable opportunity to have this thing addressed properly. The truncation of June 12, which I think the aftermath should have been not just June 12 as history, but the effectuation of that election, which is believed to be the freest and fairest till tomorrow. And
I think it's also important we have the report.
Yes, well, the report is not yet out, but I think the Oputa panel was going towards that direction until it was its efforts were truncated also by the Supreme Court. And the question arose when Babangida went to court, because he was being invited by the panel. He was being summoned. And he said, so the panel cannot summon me. And they went to the Supreme Court. The matter went all the way from the High Court to the Supreme Court as to whether the panel itself is properly constituted, legally speaking. And at the end of the day, the Supreme Court said, no, you don't have anything like a commission of inquiry under our Constitution. It had died with the 1963 Constitution. And there it went, and I think that's where everything about the commission, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, was buried. But it provided a veritable opportunity, just like my learned friend said, to resolution of some of these issues coming after the June 12th election. Because I don't think what happened in what the Abubakar Salam government did in involving a transition process is quite an answer to that kind of issue. I think that should have been a better way of handling it. Now we are celebrating it, but we are celebrating something that had not been effectuated. Get the point I'm making?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, somebody's getting awards who's posthumously. People are saying that he's not even deserving of that award. People are saying that, well, an award of that nature cannot be given to him. A lot of people are raising all manner of sarcastic questions regarding the award. But to what extent has the government of the past, of the present, and the future try to effectuate June 12? I think there are better ways it should have been handled apart from giving an award, so to speak. Because the giving an award is just merely cosmetic and ephemeral. I think something.
For senior counsel, I must say that the very fact that we now have Democracy Day changed from this bold attempt to change it, even though we are not dealing with it. For us, because of the euphoria, we're not dealing with the legal issues yet. I think we must be able to commend the government to have been able to concede to the clamor of many years past that June 12 be recognized as a proper Democracy Day. I think that was some courage on the part of the president and this administration, which some of us consider to be obstinate when it comes to taking pieces of advice from critics. But this time around,
they did otherwise. Yes. Okay, you're still on PTV Situation Room. It's time for a quick break. We've been discussing June 12, the matters that have been happening in the past, that are happening in the past, vis-a-vis today, what it signifies. Do stay. You're welcome back. Thanks for staying with us in the studio discussing the activities surrounding June 12, 1993 and the way forward. Has been Frank Tete and Festus Oguche. Thank you very much. So just before the break, Frank was, explaining to us the fact that, the president, it should be acknowledged that his present administration has gone out of its way to, recreate history of some sort. As Oguche has been saying that even though, we've been marking this day already, but then we should look at the legal backends and the legal. So now talking about today, there's some that are saying, okay, his name should be written down as, one of the past presidents. What legal steps, as you were trying to highlight, could or should be in place before today's, honoring or the honorary award be taken seriously? Festus.
Well, the issues are very straightforward. First of all, commend the boldness of government in taking this decision, in spite of the fact that we have other problems that are besetting in this country that are more serious than what we are celebrating now. People are still at the crossroads as to whether to celebrate democracy or not. I'm trying to be as pungent as possible because the dividends have not trickled down very well to the masses. The level of pain and suffering and deprivation reaches to high heavens. But that's by the way. June 12th, like I said, is a watershed in our political experience, in our march towards freedom, towards constitutionalism and democracy. And it's worthy of celebration. But if you have to do it, we must do it the proper way. I don't think there's anything that will be very proper or right to give the June 12th winner a presidential mantle or to accord him with that office. That would be very bogus. He had never been president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. As a matter of fact, Professor Nwosu was at the verge of declaring him the winner of that election. And I think it was within that period that the masterstroke fell. First of all, it was the judgment of the High Court of, he's sitting in Abuja, whether it's a Federal High Court or High Court of the Federal Capital Territory. Justice Ekpeme, right? If I'm correct. Yes. And then, of course, the action of Mr. President then, Ibrahim Babangida, to annul it, and all this put together just truncated the entire process. So it is truncated. It is not something that you are here. We can, unless you are saying we should call Professor Nwosu to the table to declare the election results and
but I'm aware.
Declare him the president. If not, it's like it's akin to placing the cart before the horse.
I'm aware that I watched Professor Nwosu actually declaring the full results. Professor Humphrey Nwosu actually declaring the full results. He wrote a book, some years ago. I watched him on the national TV, where he actually completed the entire results.
He did not declare him president.
No, he didn't. But the results are not clear. So, but the point is this. Asking that MK will be declared president comes with a lot of missed issues. Perhaps the president will have to step down and say that, okay, let's now have
Or we go to the graveside of
Yeah.
MKO Abiola and
It's
invoke
unnecessary.
his spirit.
I think it's unnecessary.
move over to Asha Rock.
I think MKO has been given sufficient recognition with what has happened today. I watched the telecast of the live telecast of events at State House this morning. I saw the awards being received by members on behalf of the families of MKO and Chief Gani Fahimi, and then I saw Ambassador Kingibe also receiving his own award. Nothing could be more in terms of an honor and recognition given to those persons, MKO, Gani Fahimi, and Babagana Kingibe. I think we should leave it there. However, there are lessons, a lot of lessons to be learned. We had a success of the June 12, 1993 general elections because we had only 2 parties. Now we have unnecessarily a large number of parties, which for me I think is ridiculous. Without any means of screening those parties, even this is not the first time we had multi-party democracy. Well, we've always had a 2-party system where there is large room for coalitions to be formed. And we saw that largely the First Republic was an election that was the general election that was conducted between between 2 major coalitions, the Nigerian National Alliance and then the United Progressive Grand Alliance, which made up of the various groups, including our action group and the rest of them. So we would have thought that alliances would have been encouraged in these coming general elections, where we would be left with 2 credible choices that would help us reenact what happened in June 12, 1993. I don't see that coming because with all these multiplicity mushroom parties around, I think there is just utter confusion. And June 12th, the experience of June 12 appears to be very, very far away from our experience.
How about you, Festus? Do you share that? Or
I think there are certain dialectics and experience that that are comparable, or maybe to a large extent, that will accompany June 12. And our good understanding of it is quite vital to how far we can go in this democratic system. June 12 came with a robust political platform. 2 political platforms with deep-seated ideologies, quite different from what we have now. We have a ragtag of people, opportunists and desperados, who want to form a political party just for their own self-gains, with little or no philosophy, and that's why it's easy for one to move from party A to party B. If you get to party B and you're threatened, you rush back to come back to party A with little or no ideologies, and that is why our democracy is yet to take strong roots. As a matter of fact, it's not just celebrating MKO Abiola, it is celebrating those principles he stood for. Look at the electionary campaigns as at that time. Option A4, which I think is best for our own system, considering the fact that we are always beset with electoral flaws, is something that has been discarded. I was a very mature person at that time, and the campaign process was quite deep and elevating to a large extent. They toured almost every local government area, wriggling out their manifestos, their campaign, giving their promises and how they read those promises, quite different from what we have now, where somebody will come, will say, if I come, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. At the end of the day, he gets there and begins to do other things. But what's more important is not just the fact that an award is being given to Abiola or those of them that participated frontally in the June 12 election saga, but also that the experience of that election, the experience that comes with it, must always come to bear in our decisions concerning how we run our democracy, how we run the electoral process, how governance is done. I mean, that things must be in tandem with the minimum standards of governance, particularly the elective principle, elections. We have a whole lot of international instruments that govern elections in Africa, in the United Nations Forum, but how many of them are being applied in this country? That even the elections are more or less decided by the tribunals and the courts. At the end of the day, for sheer technicality, somebody who did not win an election will be declared the winner of the election. Somebody who is rejected at the polls by the people.
Who didn't contest.
Somebody who did not contest. Well, it's quite obvious.
Allow me to say this. I want the young Nigerians to know that June 12 and MKO represented a whole lot of things that we missed. MKO at that time was Africa's richest man. He was a billionaire. But we need to know that. The kind of Trump experience the Americans had, the kind of revolution they now had in the election of Trump, we were there many years ago, about 25 years ago. We had a first-class material coming to become president. He became rich, not by being...
That's in spite of fears. People expressed that time that his government was going to be elitist.
No. Because if you recall, I was always reading Prime People and the Quality Magazine and all of that time. They were all containing many stories of Abiola's generosity. He was known to be so kind. I said, why did they call him the pillar of sports? Abiola was dishing out money to successful footballers that were not even from Nigeria.
He was also championing reparations for slavery.
Roger Miller, for example, did well at the World Cup. He scored the winning goal for Cameroon. Cameroon didn't go very far. He invited Roger Miller, gave Roger Miller so much money. Abiola Babes, you need to see the way he funded Abiola Babes, a model football club. Abiola was a revolutionary. Nigerians knew what Abiola was represented. And are you talking about Concord? The kind of news that Concord was. Concord reported news about the high and the mighty, the low and the high, whatever. So Abiola, and then you want to talk about ITT. Abiola was a revolutionary. Long before the telephone came, Abiola had imported telephone technology in such a manner that we had telephones installed. Abiola had the contract of installing the telephone masts across the various local governments. And then Abiola represented, before satellite TV came, ITT, Abiola's company, had already brought satellite technology. Abiola at that time was famed for how he could just touch a life, meeting somebody who was poor, broke, and then he transforms the person's life instantly with that kind of money. That was the message that every Nigerian knew about the man. And that was the man who had the first class. A man who did not ever get into a political office. He worked his way through as a very poor fellow. Interestingly, Abiola had meetings with people like Basanjo, Fela, Nicola Kokuti. They all come from the same zone. That's Ogun, Abiokuta, Aziz, and all that. These were men who saw poverty and also had privileges of coming to wealth and then to power. What Nigeria missed in Abiola is much more than the free and fair elections we experienced in June 12th. But we missed a personality that defied the divide of religion, the divide of ethnicity, the divide of, that kind of politics that we had in the First Republic, which led to the Wild Wild West, Western Nigeria being burnt in 1962, and then 1964-65 general election crisis. All of those things would have been a thing of the past. So I wonder, I was watching the whole episode with a colleague of mine. I said, look, where were those forces who decided that, look, Nigeria mustn't move forward at that time? Who were those forces? Those are the things we need to consider.
And again, we are looking at those forces who decided that Nigeria must stand still.
Yeah.
And that's why we are saying that this award must always come with some sanctions, because the people responsible for the truncation of that election are still alive.
Unfortunately, General Babangida played that card again, because when we were growing up, in that era, General Babangida said, I am evil genius. And he did display it. Because the way General Babangida at that time, should be commended for his, unusual sagacity. Because he was able to manage the serious conflicting, military era at that time. With that, he balanced it. So he was always, he was referred to as the political Maradona, because he was always playing people. He would look out for the best Nigerian in any sector. He would bring him up. Was it Tai Solari? Was it Professor Omar Omori? Was it Samoy Oare? Was it who was who in Nigeria at that time? Babangida got them. Even Professor Wole Soyinka, Babangida got all of them and put them in government. However, nobody knew what his agenda was, because it was an unusual political mastery. For that two-party system, the ideology I'm talking about was written by government for them to campaign on, and the party secretariats were built in all the local governments, and then the party was funded directly by government. So we saw for the first time in our country where a poor broke guy who was trekking the streets just speaks good English and says, look, I will deliver my people, and he goes to register, and then he gets into the State House of Assembly. There was a revolution in Nigeria at that time. Unfortunately, all of these things were swept away, and we're just hoping and praying that we could get back to that place. So Babangida, yes, now plays the good guy. He did annul the elections, but he now says, oh, I annulled the elections because my friends in the army told me that, look, we're going to shoot this guy the next day. if you allow him to become president. He says, so I did in the best interest of my friend Abiola. I didn't want him killed. So I know Mr. Oguche will try to knock that out. But Babangida this morning sent, when he sent his apologies that he couldn't come for the event, people still see him as a saint. Whereas I still recall, you know, because Babangida would want to make a decision to make sure he lectures the country for not less than 1.5 hours, possibly 2-3 hours, in a long speech, and then everybody gets bored and gets uninterested, and then when I say election dissolved.
You see, we are discussing the June 12th. It's not all about rhetorics. It's all about pragmatism. What is June 12 all about? Why should we celebrate June 12? The democracy we have now, does that pander to the wills and interests of the people? To what extent do people get involved or participate in the process of democracy, as to see that we have a very dramatic break from the past, military rule and what have you. If you look at the democracies before now, the ones that were entrenched in the country, will you say that those ones are inferior to the one we have today? Because when I see a lot of disjointed fragments of participation by people in the electoral process, I also see that people are only interested in it for their own personal gains. That the idea of selfless service to the country, to the people, is no longer there. People are totally and completely disconnected from governance. And that is a very, very big sore point. We can go celebrating June 12 to high heavens, but as far as I'm concerned, there's a very, very big disconnect. The nexus that connects the people with the governors, with the people that govern. The nexus between the people who are governed and the governed is very, very large, and it is yawning every day. It is not just picking up our mantle and raising our flags or our thumbs up for MK or Abiola. It is also ensuring that democracy represents the will and interests of the people, that the welfare and security of the people becomes the primary purpose of government. To what extent is the will, to what extent is the welfare and the interest of the people the primary purpose of government at the federal level, at the state level, at the local government levels? You know, these things must have to be said, because if you say that it is participatory, government of the people, by the people, for the people,
you have to say it.
First of all, you have to ensure that the electoral process is transparent. You have to ensure the governance meets every standard. You have to ensure that there's actually equal participation and the will of the people as expressed through the electoral processes are properly and well represented. To what extent are these being done? It's not just going on the street and shouting Abiola, MK or Abiola, and June 12. The man that died is in his grave. Those of us who are celebrating, we may not know what is uppermost on his mind for coming out to contest that election that was annulled. But to a large extent, I think those principles that were erupted, just as my learned friend reeled out that time, in June 12, are totally, completely absent today.
And it's unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Is. I remember, I know we're out of time, but if I had my way, it rings so clearly in my mind. On the march again, looking for Mr. President. MKO is our man. MKO is our man.
He had the overwhelming support of the entire country.
Everywhere.
It crossed across religious, ethnic, and ethnic divides.
Looking for Mr. President, on the march again, Hope 93. Everywhere, Nigerians had hope. Now, I think that it's clear to me that our current leaders need to work very hard go beyond posthumous awards and recognition of June 12 as a democracy day.
And go into the nitty-gritty of governance.
Because we fought a civil war in this country between 1967 and 1970. One of the worst civil wars ever in the history of the world, if you don't know. Medicine Sans Frontier was established purposely because of the humanitarian crisis that were emanated from the Nigerian Civil War. The Nigerian Civil War was so terrible, the humanitarian crisis is indescribable. However, we also moved on from there to a long period of militarianism, which eroded rights. And then we went through the period of Second Republic of Shehu Shagari, which witnessed, a lot of political profligacy, which did not establish any direction for our country. And then the military came again in the person of Muhammadu Buhari, and then General Babangida. We went through very, harrowing experiences as a country, only for us to get to a place where the past seemed to have worked
That's the point I'm making. That's exactly the point I'm making, because you see, Walter Rodney, he wrote High Europe, Underdeveloped Africa. He said, a people or a system which is standing still where others are moving forward is tantamount to going backwards.
Yeah.
And that's a very sore point we have to make, because people look back with nostalgic feelings at those past systems that we thought were failures, including Shagari. Now, Shagari could be, if you put it comparatively with what we have now, is a huge success.
It was a saint. It was a big saint. Because under Shehu Shagari, I remember the federal government versus Sugar Badaman came under Shagari. Shagari, a court in Nigeria issued an order against the government.
Yes.
And the government quickly obeyed. Sugar Badaman was brought back to the country, paid 350,000 naira as compensation, and instated back into the National Assembly.
Yes.
The government at that time was, held the rule of law as sacrosanct.
Because the institutions then were strong.
And
it's not just Sugar Badaman. Yes. Even under the military, Ojukwu against government.
What are we talking about?
The military will do everything, but they will never get near to the judicial system. They were operating independently. Which judicial system we have now that has, in so many ways, that have not pandered to the will and interest and expectations of the people.
I think we are moving back. We're moving back with some reckless speed. Going backward with reckless.
You got
and unfortunately, we are not discussing these things at the national. And I must thank People's Television for giving us this.
Elections in this country are decided mostly by the courts, and maybe the use of card reader or not the use of card reader. Somebody who did not participate in the electoral process becomes the winner of the election, and all that, discarding every of the principles in the UN Declaration for minimum standards of electoral justice. We have so many instruments concerning elections, both globally, at the regional level, at the ECOWAS level, they have protocols. All these are discarded. And at the end of the day, the wrong people get into positions of authority and power. And what do you expect? Because they don't have any connection with the people. Of course, you'll not expect them to have, I don't know how to put it, but what is important is that we must take from June 12 those positive aspects of it that will help us to move further beyond the realm of this system that you are practicing that we call democracy, which to me is not democratic. As far as I'm concerned, it's my opinion. Anybody can hold a different opinion. But we are far away from democracy.
Questions have been asked whether democracy has actually delivered anything good for the people of Nigeria.
This one has not.
From 1999 to date, I think the democratic experience has been negative. It has done more harm to
poverty is a prevention.
Thank you both for all that you've mentioned. You've actually, took me back. Basically, I was just having a mental picture of every single thing that you were saying. And I'm sure our audience, of course, will like it. Oh my God. Let's now, can we not go into the age message? Thank you so much. But for it's a wonderful one. It's a wonderful one for a day like this to reminisce.
I'm still very hopeful. I can sing. MK is our man. That was it.
Thank you so much. It has been an educative and an enlightening one. And you both made, some salient points that I hope the government, would consider and look into and try to make things different. But for time, we'll go on a quick break where you would no longer see our guests, and then we'll come round up PTV Situation Room. Just stay.